My action research project focuses on student motivation through the use of inquiry-based learning. I was interested in learning more about the benefits of inquiry-based learning in the classroom for students because I use this approach in my grade 6 placement for social studies, and I wanted to research how successful it can be in other curriculum areas. More specifically, I will be specifically focusing on science. My problem statement. It has been seen more recently in schools the move from teacher-directed learning to inquiry-based learning to improve student learning and increase student motivation. I wanted to focus on using inquiry-based learning in the science curriculum because the sciences can be very content-heavy for students. So by making it more hands-on and meaningful for students, it could successfully increase student learning and motivation. My research question is, how can I incorporate inquiry-based learning in grade 6 science units as a way to increase student motivation for learning? Let's have a look at some definitions to consider throughout this research project. Motivation is one of the most difficult aspects of teaching, but also the most important. Students who are not motivated will not learn effectively and could be unmotivated for various reasons. A teacher who promotes student-directed learning allows choice for students and is usually coupled with support from the teacher. Inquiry-based learning is a form of active learning that starts with teacher posing questions or problems and inquires students will identify and research issues to develop their knowledge and solutions. The goal as educators is to help students make the leap from natural curiosity to a space where ideas can be transformed into formalized understanding. The strands in the grade 6 science curriculum in Ontario are biodiversity, flight, electricity, and space. This first article explores instructional strategies for pre-service teachers as they develop and implement inquiry-based learning in a science class, and that it is not useful if they do not have the proper knowledge and understanding of what it is and what it looks like. The next article evaluates inquiry-based learning in the classroom to teach evolutionary concepts to support the understanding of the work that goes into running a museum. Researchers concluded that the mean knowledge score of the post-test indicated significant learning gains compared to the pre-test results. This test on learning enjoyment showed best mean values for actions that included the collection of materials, therefore stating that the students who participated in the hands-on activities did enjoy the activity more and also learned more. The article on virtual learning in science highlights that students were still engaged and learned content even after the excitement of the technology in the classroom wore off. So similar to the previous article, researchers concluded that over time, enthusiasm about the technology faded and students became more aware of the appreciative of the kinds of activities that the program supported, the opportunities it affords for self-directed learning, for inquiry-based activities, and for collaboration with a team. Finally, this last article discusses that teachers who are against inquiry-based learning are the ones who do not have the proper understanding of how to successfully implement it, and that proper training would be suitable to increase the use of inquiry-based learning into the classroom. It is important for teachers to have experience and knowledge of inquiry-based learning in order to successfully implement it into their teaching practices. Researchers in these various studies found that inquiry-based learning had a greater impact on student learning, which was demonstrated when students were asked to explain what they knew before learning and after learning. During the before learning, students tried to restate definitions that they tried to memorize from a textbook of scientific terms, whereas after the study, they were able to explain their understanding of these scientific terms with concrete examples. These studies proved to be beneficial because they provide important evidence that supports my question of using inquiry-based learning in the science classroom, but that it can only be successful when the teacher has a good understanding of how to properly implement it. The use of inquiry-based learning is becoming more and more encouraged in schools as an effective method to increase student motivation in STEM subjects, as well as increasing their understanding of scientific concepts. My action research plan. Through observations, I will be able to capture a greater picture of behaviors, attitudes, interactions, and understanding of the students. Teachers will record observations at the beginning, middle, and end stages of student learning and use video recordings to support my observations when reflecting on teacher experiences. Teachers will individually record observations at the end of each month, using journals with prompts that I will provide that will guide the observations based on what teachers saw, how they felt, what they did, what went well, and what didn't go so well as what they would change for the next steps. Students will be asked to write a reflection about once a week on what they learned and the level of enjoyment of the work they did. This will allow me to reflect on the level of engagement and ensure that students are still learning the content that was set out for them. Reaching out to other schools and school boards across the province will ensure that the data collection is valid and consistent, as we are only looking at the grade 6 curriculum. Using data collected from various areas will ensure that the data is valid, rather than looking at one specific school board, as well as school boards have different views on learning techniques. Data will be collected from student conversations about the material they have learned and the level of enjoyment they have towards the project at the beginning, middle, and end to see how they are still engaged at the end of the project. I chose to use a data source of grade 6 teachers and students across 10 schools in each school board in Ontario. I decided to keep the data to grade 6 teachers because I am interested in how students are learning in the higher junior grades and getting ready to move into the intermediate classes. I would request that students, principals, teachers, and parents provide consent for the research to take place and collect pictures, classwork, reflections in order to compile the data. Confidentiality will be maintained by using pseudonyms for names and covering faces and pictures so that the privacy of students and all participants is respected. The research will be optional for schools if they wish to participate or not, with the option to back out at any time during the study. Anecdotal notes will be recorded by the teacher on a bi-weekly basis from January to May. Teachers will reflect once a month in written journals based on student achievement, student interaction, and motivation at the end of each month of the study. Finally, students will write personal weekly reflections based on their understanding of what they have learned so far and their leveling of engagement. This will also be used as part of their final project so that the teacher is able to evaluate the content students have learned throughout the project. The data will be analyzed by comparing the data collected across different schools in each school board participating. I will analyze the data by comparing all the schools' reflections and work. Overall, this action research study will help support my knowledge of teaching and teaching practices, as research has shown that many students benefit from inquiry-based learning in the classroom over the standard teaching methods. With a greater understanding of inquiry-based learning and its benefits for student learning and motivation, I believe that this will help me in my teaching practice by utilizing inquiry-based learning to introduce new, engaging ways of learning for students.